So this is the 98 Acura Integra GSR we've been working on for like a million years now. It's actually been sitting for a million years and we finally just are now getting to it. So just starting off, we ditched the factory harness here and we went to a Carrot Top tuning harness. And so I wanted to go over that a little bit. So basically on that harness, you are going to use this plug. As you can see, we routed the plugs from the inside out. And you know, the engine I'm not going to go over because I'm sure you guys know how to do that. The second part of the engine harness is not even used anymore. So like this part of the harness is just completely unplugged now. And going inside the car, as you can see, we got our sweet Link ECU plugged in. So this is the harness here. This is the harness that ran to the driver's side, and it plugs into here, and it also strangely plugs into the factory OBD2B or OBD2A connector, strangely enough. But that's essentially it in a nutshell there. I'm waiting for my laptop to update and then power on, and then we will plug into the Link. So when you get your sub harness for your 96, 98 Integra, it's going to be really confusing. So the harness is all OBD1 stuff, so I'm going to move the ECU aside for now. But you can see that a portion of the stock ECU is still here. So this is the sub harness right here. Sub harness plugs into the factory ECU connectors here. Then it splits into this, which is this side of the connector is for your new harness. And then it runs to the other side, the driver's side. So here on the driver's side, the sub harness comes out through the firewall and then it connects into these two plugs right here. And so everything else is tossed in the trash, and then that's how you hook up your new OBD1 to OBD2 complete harness. Bro, smells like a junkyard. Okay, so we're gonna do some injector testing. I've already tested this off camera, so I know what works and what doesn't. So on the Link ECU, we're gonna turn this to on. So that means that the injector number 1 should be clicking. So we're gonna, as you can see, this is labeled as number 1. It's obviously unplugged, and we're gonna plug it into cylinder number 3. And you should hear it click. So as you can see, it's clicking, right? So we're gonna leave this alone. We're gonna leave it on 1, and we're gonna check cylinders 2. If I can get it plugged in. So here it is in 2, and there's no noises. And we put it into 1 and we get no noises. So we know that the wiring is good because injector 3 will click when we plug number 1 into it, right? So I've already checked it off camera. All the wiring is good. So all the triggers work. It's these 1 and 2 that are stuck. And this happens a lot. When cars sit for a long time, injectors do get stuck. So we're just gonna plug this guy in, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to get the car running, and then we literally will hit the injectors with an extension, just give it a little lub taps just to get the corrosion off of it. So as you can see, it's plugged in. Injector 1's not doing anything, so 1 and 2 are our problem. Finally got this thing ready to start. So we swapped out the Honda S300 to a Link G4X. We removed the Denso coil and plug kit and we swapped over to Audi coils. This thing hopefully should start and run. I can't guarantee it, but I know a ton of vacuum hoses are cracked and all that, so if it does start, it's gonna probably idle pretty grossly high. Yeah, pretty high. Okay, so now that you guys have seen it running, just a little update here. The fans work, AC's not working, but I'm not sure why. I haven't made it that far yet. As you can see, we've got the R8 coils here, and they pop right into the B series valve cover. This harness may look familiar to some of you guys, and that's because I pulled it off the Ford Ranger because we were no longer using it. It's still in waste spark configuration, and I made a new end here, so we're gonna put some grounds on it over there. Power wire, I'm not quite sure where we're gonna get this from, but I'm thinking about tapping it from the distributor side, and then I've got the 2 wasted spark wires going in. Now on the inside of the car, here's the Link ECU itself. As you can see, here are our 2 coil wires. So the Link ECU is really cool is because that it uses a lot of spare ports. So if you look on your like OBD1 style connector, you'll see that there's like a lot of unopened ones, and Link has actually purposed those to ignition outputs and auxiliary outputs. So If you're lucky like me and you have a ton of these wiring around, you can basically just depin this and then stick them in. So I'm sure people are going to wonder why, but instead of running sequential, which we definitely can do on the Link, I decided to run WaveSpark. Not really because the coils were already wired from it, because I could have really easily changed it to sequential. But the fact of the matter is that I don't really see a lot of pros and cons between full sequential and WaveSpark, to be honest with you. Idle and cruise are a little bit better. Gas mileage is just a smidge better, but it's not really that much better. Just to give you an idea, like, DSM cars, Evo cars, those cars are all WaveSpark, and they've made a ton of power and they've ran pretty good. So why? Another thing too is that you want to save as many outputs as you possibly can. The reason is that down the line, if he adds water methanol, nitrous, boost control, any of that other stuff, a second, third fuel pump, who knows what he's going to run, it's always good to have a bunch of extra outputs. So it's easy to do CAN bus inputs, but it's difficult to gain additional outputs. So, yeah, of course we could have went sequential. Yeah, overall it would have been slightly better, but again, slightly, I don't know if it's really justifiable for the gains. Anyways, with that being said, as you can see, I haven't put connectors on this yet, and the reason is I want to verify my work. So when we had the car running, just to burn up some of the bad gas that was in it, the alternator started to fail. So the car was running and it started running kind of choppy, so I plugged into the laptop and suddenly come to find out that the alternator is not working. So battery was down to like 8 volts or so I went ahead and pulled the battery off and then threw in the charger. So I've got to wait for the battery to finish up my work here, obviously making sure that these were pinned correctly. These two are pinned correctly, otherwise I'll have to flip them, so I don't want to put them in the connector just yet. Other issues that we're seeing is that the coolant temperature gauge and the tachometer are not working. I don't know if the speedometer is working, but nothing in the gauge cluster is working. Everything else is working in the gauge cluster with the exception of the tachometer and the coolant temp gauge. So that's something that we'll have to investigate. He did have a Spartan wideband in here, and here's the wires running to it. Unfortunately, I went to go power it up, and then I went to check for the 0 to 5 volt output, and it is not working. Keep in mind that this car has been sitting for quite a few years now, so it doesn't surprise me that's not working. So the next order of business now is to obviously get the battery charged up, toss it back in, start it up just to be sure that what I've done is good, then troubleshoot the alternator and wideband and go from there. So that is our little update on this car.